Fordham, what brings you to this delightful spectacle?
Hello, Edwards. I'm investigating the Justice Killer. I believe I've got a very promising lead.
I heard an officer mention new orders from Snelling, but I thought he was just pulling my leg. Feel free to have a look around. I'm just writing up the notes from my initial examination of the body, so I'll be happy to share my findings.
Good. I'll just get started then.
Nothing but a bunch of boring documents. You'd think he could have at least been considerate enough to keep something scandalous in here. Looks pretty fresh. I wonder what the killer uses to write with. These appear to be books on cryptography. I suppose everyone needs a hobby. No signs of forced entry that I can see. The murderer didn't come in through this window. Leave it to a politician to hang a portrait of himself in his own office. The former Percival McDonough, being a good politician. Nothing has been written in yet for next month. Curious. Odd. The page for this month has been torn out. You suppose Edwards might know anything about that? Odd. The page for this month... Nothing has been written in yet. Nothing has...
Got a moment, Edwards?
Of course. What's on your mind?
So, what was found at the crime scene?
A dead body.
Edwards.
Hey, just trying to lighten the mood a bit. Anyway, there was also the word justice written in blood, as you can see on the floor there.
Is that all?
What more do you need? All the pieces are in place. This is the work of the Justice Killer.
What did your examination of the body turn up?
Apparent cause of death was a single gunshot to the head, exactly like all the other victims. The bullet is still lodged in his brain. I'll remove it once I transport the body back to the mortuary.
Anything else?
No personal effects of note, just a folded-up piece of paper in his breast pocket. It's blank, so the police weren't interested. I assume you aren't either.
Never assume, Edwards. I'll take it if you don't mind.
Be my guest.
Did the police manage to learn anything during their investigation?
Not much beyond what I've already told you. I think they were planning on speaking to the victim's wife, though.
Did you get the address?
I did, as a matter of fact. 1820 Kent Place.
Now we get to deal with the grieving widow. Hopefully the officers who delivered the news got the worst of it.
Did you find an Easter lily anywhere?
An Easter lily?
Yes. The Justice Killer leaves one at every crime scene.
Is that right? I never noticed.
Neither did anyone else, apparently.
So how does leaving a lily at the scene of the crime figure into all of this?
I'm still trying to figure that out, but I think it might be important to understanding his motive.
Well, be sure to let me know if you do figure it out. The thought process of killers is a twisted, curious thing.
What's your take on this whole Justice Killer situation?
It's giving me a lot of extra work, let me tell you. We haven't had a serial murderer in a long time, Not since that fellow who was poisoning people about 10 years ago.
Ah, yes. The Gascon Ghoul. Now there was a case.
Any theories or insights regarding the killer's motive or identity?
That's not really my specialty. If you want to get into that psychology stuff, you're better off talking to someone like Snelling.
Does it feel good to be out of the office?
As long as I have the chance to examine a body and learn something in the process, I don't care where I am. Though I do admit a preference to working in my own environment, fieldwork can be a bit uncertain. There's so much more potential for contamination, especially with those clumsy officers trouncing about groping everything. Present company excluded, of course.
Edwards, did you notice McDonough's desk calendar?
I did. This month has been torn out. I asked the officers investigating the scene, and they had no idea what happened to it.
So it wasn't found in this room?
That's right. My theory is that the killer took it.
Which means there was probably something incriminating written on it. If only there was some way of knowing what it was.
Miles, have you forgotten the oldest trick in the book? Just find a pencil and you'll have that information in no time.
Edwards, do you have a pencil I might borrow?
Of course. Take this one.
Thank you. That's all for now, Edwards.
Good luck with your investigation.
A classic trick. Let's see if it works. Aha! McDonough met with this person the night of the murder. I'll bet 500 crowns it's a false name, but at least it's something. Intriguing. We'll need to find out who this Ruby is. It seems the killer didn't want anyone to know about this meeting with McDonough, and possibly not with Ruby either. It seems the killer didn't want anyone...
Ahem.
What? Who are you?
I'm Miles Fordham, private investigator. Your butler just announced me.
Oh, of course. Forgive me. I was just, well, never mind. Please make yourself comfortable, Mr. Fordham.
Thank you, Mrs. McDonough. I appreciate you seeing me, Mrs. McDonough. I know you must be going through a difficult time right now.
What exactly is it you want from me, Mr. Fordham? I already spoke to the police about my husband's murder.
I just have a few questions of my own.
Oh, very well.
What can you tell me about your husband?
I'll tell you the same thing I told the police, Mr. Fordham. Percival was one of the hardest working members of Parliament. He took his job extremely seriously. The recent election caused him a terrible amount of consternation, as I'm sure it did most people. He took Atwood's loss rather hard.
Did you see much of him?
I beg your pardon?
Surely someone with such an important position in government could find themselves consumed by their work. Did he spend much time at home?
He made it a point to come home and have dinner with me every night, even if he had to return to the office afterwards.
And did that happen often?
At least 3 or 4 times in a week, yes. He'd stay in his office working late into the night. As I said, he was very dedicated to his role.
Sounds to me like she's quite dedicated to hers, too.
Did your husband have any enemies?
He was a politician, Mr. Fordham. Half the city hated him.
Did he ever receive any kind of threats against his life?
None that I was ever made aware of. I have no idea who could have killed him, let alone who could have gotten into his office to do it. He hadn't told me about any meetings or appointments this week either.
Was it his custom to inform you of his work affairs?
Oh, well, I've always taken an interest in my husband's work. He'd often mention initiatives he was working on or people he was meeting, that sort of thing. Nothing sensitive or confidential, you understand. Just conversation about his day.
Can you think of any reason why your husband would have been murdered?
Not really. He was a vocal opponent of the construction of the Gascogne-Chumley Bridge, but I hardly think that would have been sufficient reason to drive someone to murder.
Why is that?
Well, it's just a bridge, isn't it? There are plenty of other ways to get to Chumley.
I meant, why was he opposed to it?
Oh, because the amount of money required to build it is exorbitant. Public funds should be used on roads and buildings that are falling apart. What's the point of having something shiny and new if everything around it is in disrepair?
How are you feeling, Mrs. McDonough?
My husband of 42 years was shot in his office. How do you think I feel?
Tactful as always, Fordham. How do you do it?
My apologies. Perhaps that wasn't the most appropriate question. Is there anything I can do to help?
You can start by finding the monster who murdered Percival.
Are you familiar with the art of cryptography, Mrs. McDonough?
What an odd question.
It's just I noticed several books on the subject in your husband's office.
Oh, well, yes. Percival was interested in cryptography and secret messages and the like. He would sometimes leave me coded notes when we first began courting many years ago.
What kind of notes?
Oh, now, Mr. Fordham, those were private. But Percival got a thrill out of knowing I was the only one who could read them. Sometimes he would write them using a special ink that would only appear when the paper was heated. I can't remember the last time he did that, though.
Do you know anyone named Shackley?
No, I've never heard that name before. Why?
I saw your husband had a meeting scheduled with him shortly before his murder.
That can't be right. He didn't tell me about that. He always told me about his meetings.
It was written on his office calendar, clear as day.
As I said, I don't know who that person is. Why wouldn't Percival have told me about their meeting?
Why indeed?
Are you familiar with someone named Ruby?
I can't say I am. Who is it?
Just a name that's come up in my investigation.
Sounds like the name of a trollop, or perhaps a dog.
Have you heard of the Justice Killer?
That was the name the police mentioned when they told me about Percival's murder. It's absolutely terrifying to think that one sick person could be capable of such Such evil. Why is he called the Justice Killer? What justice was done by murdering my husband?
I'm afraid I can't answer that right now, Mrs. McDonough, but I intend to find out. Those are all the questions I have for now, Mrs. McDonough.
All right, Mr. Fordham.
Just a painting of some boring old aristocrat. I think I'll call this one Lord Edmund Henry Lickspittle the Elder. They look expensive, but I bet they're totally worthless. I feel sorry for the sucker who has to clean them. This one looks like a Lady Camilla Prudence Wigglewaddle the Grey. Lord Alfred Edward Shufflebottom the Wise comes to mind when looking at this one. They look expensive, but I bet they're totally worth. Surely this one was called Lady Felicity Euphemia Beaversnatch the Simple. They look expensive, but I bet they're totally. If this actually works, I'll eat my hat. Well, I'll be damned.
Can we talk some more, Mrs. McDonough?
I suppose so, yes.
Do you know anything about this letter?
I'm afraid I don't have my spectacles. What is it?
The coroner found it in your husband's pocket. He gave it to me because he thought it was blank. But after you told me about your husband's propensity for writing secret messages, I decided to try exposing the paper to heat. Allow me to read it to you. Dearest Mary, words cannot express the regret and sorrow I feel for how I acted last night. I swore to myself I would never harm you again after the last time, but I have failed us both. It is my deepest hope that you can forgive me and trust that I will never allow this monster out again.
I see. May I have that letter, Mr. Fordham?
I'm afraid I have to keep it for now. It's evidence.
I suppose that does make sense.
Mrs. McDonough, did Percival mistreat or abuse you?
He wasn't a bad man, Mr. Fordham. I wouldn't have married him if he was. It's just the stress of his responsibilities would sometimes oppress him. I would try and offer comfort, soothe his nerves, but there were a few instances where he lost control of his passions.
Did he ever hit you?
He did.
How many times did this happen?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe 2 or 3. You don't exactly count these things.
What a bastard. Maybe it serves him right for getting shot.
Thank you for your candor, Mrs. McDonough.
Can we please talk about something else?
Those are all the questions I have for now, Mrs. McDonough.
All right, Mr. Fordham.
Fordham, how goes the investigation?
I'm making some headway.
Is that right? I certainly hope so for your sake.
Chief Jacobs. Now there was a leader. The rumor was always that the chief kept a bottle of something in a secret compartment in this cabinet. In Snelling's case, it's probably just water. Every book and file in there is organized to perfection. I'll bet Snelling gets flustered if anything is even a millimeter out of place. You should bump into the side when he's not looking.
Chief Snelling?
Yes, Fordham?
What information do you have on the Justice Killer?
Clearly not as much as you.
I see how this is gonna go.
Well, what do you have?
A list of 5 victims, some information on each of them, and no clear idea what connects them. Until your discovery of the lily at each scene, that was where we stood. While I doubt this discovery will do much to aid in tracking him down, I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Do you know anything about Percival McDonough?
He's a member of Parliament. I believe his constituency is somewhere in central Kingsland. From the reports I've gotten, McDonough led a rather unassuming life for a politician. He is, however, the first victim who didn't live in Chumley. Either there's a link we've missed, or the killer is changing his method. Then again, since you seem so confident in your abilities to resolve this matter, I assume you'll provide an explanation.
Count on it. What do you know about the Justice Killer's previous victims?
Only what's in their files. All working men from Chumley. That's the only link.
You didn't look further into their personal lives? Maybe they had some social connection.
As I said, the detectives found nothing. You seem to think you can do better, so I'll leave it up to you.
You have to wonder how much more thorough the department's investigations would have been if the 4 men were all rich like McDonough.
So I see the department is still running like a well-oiled machine.
It is, in fact, but I'm sure Upton has kept you well informed of our activities. Incidentally, the woman accused in the Harris kidnapping is set to testify in court today.
Linda Walker's trial is today? That was fast.
Indeed. Sometimes the wheels of justice grind slowly. Sometimes they spin out of control. She'll be taking the stand within the hour. If you care to hear her for yourself, best get going soon.
Listen, about Leger's death.
I don't want to hear it, Fordham. What happened, happened. Nothing you can say is going to change my opinion on the matter.
And if I manage to find the man responsible?
The man responsible is standing before me. Even if you manage to find the culprit you let escape, it isn't going to bring Leger back from the dead.
But it will bring closure to the matter.
If that thought is what allows you to sleep at night, then so be it.
What makes him think you sleep at night?
Enjoying your new position, Snelling?
Reaping the rewards for years of hard work and dedicated service. A gratifying feeling you'll never be able to experience.
Oh, I get my gratification in other ways.
I'm sure you do, and I'd honestly rather not know about them.
I need to get back to my investigation.
Yes, time is not on your side, Fordham.
Remind me, Miles, why are we here again? Is this for your own personal satisfaction, or did you expect her to have some useful information?
Shh. Mrs. Linda Walker, you stand accused of kidnapping Charles Harris. What have you to say in your defense?
I had to see if I could speak with my son Alexander again.
Yes. According to your initial statement, you seem to believe that the Harris child is the reincarnation of your own deceased son.
All the evidence was there. I thought it had to be him.
And in regards to the execution of your plan, you secretly administered a soporific drug to your friend and the Harris family nanny, Mrs. Henrietta Davis? Is that correct?
Yes. I felt terrible about doing it, but there was no other way.
According to your journal, you used a mixture of chamomile and valerian, instructed by a Samuel, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Samuel is a friend of mine. He works at the docks, and he knows all about plants. I asked him what the best combination of herbs would be to put someone in a deep sleep.
So it was your idea, and not his?
Yes, that's right. He only told me about the plants. He's quite the expert. Why, you should see his collection of Easter lilies.
Did she just say what I think she said?
Now then, let's turn our attention to the night in question.
Interesting. This Samuel person might be worth looking into, although we can't waste time searching the docks with just a first name. I'd make a note of it, just in case it becomes relevant later. All right, I've had enough of this courtroom. Let's get back out there. Time's running out. Well, that doesn't look good. This place sure is big. I wonder if they actually make anything useful. Well, that doesn't look good.
Hey, that area is for workers only.
My apologies. Excuse me, sir. Are you in charge here?
Unfortunately, who are you? This area isn't open to the public.
I'm Miles Fordham, and I'm a private investigator looking into the murder of one of your workers.
A private investigator, eh? And maybe you can help me out.
I'll do what I can, but I'll need to ask you some questions, Mr.
Mims. Sanford Mims. Go ahead, but make it snappy.
What can you tell me about Hannibal Kirkland? A former employee here?
Listen, I've got a lot on my mind right now.
I understand, but it's important to my investigation that you tell me what you know about him.
I'm sure it is, but as you can see, I've got a lot to deal with right now.
Well, he's no help. Maybe you can figure out a way to help him help us.
Are you sure you can't tell me anything about Hannibal Kirkland?
It's like I've told you, I've got to deal with this mess. I don't have time for your questions.
What happened to your iron mill?
What's it look like? The damn thing went and got blown up.
Was it in disrepair?
Of course not. All my machinery is sound, checked and serviced regularly. This is the work of those goddamn Redites. I'm sure of it.
What makes you certain the explosion was the Redites doing?
Take a look, boy. The whole mill got taken out. Even if this had been a mechanical failure, which it wasn't, the explosion would have been contained to a single part of the machine. This couldn't have been anything other than sabotage.
Have you had problems with the Redites before?
They've sent anonymous letters, but this is the first time they've actually carried out one of their threats.
You're absolutely sure this was sabotage, then?
Yes. How many times have I got to tell you that? Listen, you said you were an investigator, right? So find out who did this to my machine. If you do, I'll help you out with whatever else you wanted to ask me about.
Looks like we haven't got much of a choice. He seems pretty upset about his machine.
I'll see what I can do. Are you familiar with the Justice Killer?
The who?
He's a serial murderer who's killed 5 men over the past 4 months.
Is that right? Never heard of him.
He may have killed one of your men. Weren't the police here asking about it?
Oh, is that what that was all about? I know they came poking around here a while back, but I was busy dealing with other things.
It's nice to see the lines of communication here are wide open.
How long have you been the foreman here?
Sometimes I think it's been too long. Things were so much easier before we got these machines. They keep saying they're supposed to improve our lives, but they've been nothing but trouble. I've already had 5 of my best men get mangled by some of them. And then there's these damn fools blowing things up. My hair wasn't this gray 5 years ago, you know. I swear, one of these days, I'm just going to pack it all up and retire. Let someone else deal with these damn things.
I'll be going now.
Be careful on your way out.
Huh, they seem to be making pretty decent progress. Safe for only 25 men at once. I used to draw the line at 2. I wonder if it would be any fun to tie yourself to that thing and go for a few spins.
Excuse me.
Hey, what are you doing here? this is a construction area.
I'm Miles Fordham, a private investigator. I'm looking into the murder of a man who used to work here.
Fordham? You the same man who got Laura Dupre arrested?
Yes, that's right.
Ah, good to meet you. I'm Gerard. My sister Amelie used to work as her cook. Would tell me stories about how horrible Dupre was. Good to see some justice done for a change.
Glad to be of service. And good to meet you as well, Gerard.
So you say you looking into a murder? You talking about Bowditch?
Yes, that's right. I had a few questions for you, if you don't mind.
Nah, should be okay to talk for a few minutes.
You worked with Ennis Bowditch, right? What can you tell me about him?
Ennis was fun to talk to, always telling stories. Pretty sure most of them were made up. But it made time go by faster while we worked, and he made me laugh. We weren't really friends, but it's duller without him around, you know?
Do you know what Bowditch did on his off time?
Not really. I only saw him on the job. But I know he was seeing a woman. I forget what he said her name was, though.
Did he mention anything else about her?
Oh, sure, but I don't think they are the type of thing that would help you, if you get my meaning.
Right. Anything of a non-personal nature that might help me find her?
Yes, he mentioned she worked as the serving girl at the ruined coffee house.
I see. Thanks. Do you know any details concerning Bowditch's murder?
I only found out when the boss man told us.
Can you think of anyone who might have wanted him dead?
Well, everyone here liked him. I don't think he owed no one money or nothing like that. But maybe someone at his other job wasn't so friendly with him. Who knows?
Other job?
Ennis also worked at the docks as a longshoreman.
Well, that would have been handy to know sooner. Better late than never, I guess.
Are you familiar with the Justice Killer?
Justice Killer? No, I don't know anything about that. Who is he?
A serial murderer. He's the one who killed Ennis Bowditch.
And you trying to find him?
That's the plan.
Well then, I wish you luck. Ennis didn't deserve to die the way he did. I hope that murdering bastard gets what he deserves.
So, the Gascon-Chumley Bridge is finally being worked on.
That's right. The project started up again shortly after the election. That Leroy, he's not wasting any time. Maybe a good thing for this city and for the country.
We'll have to wait and see. How long before the bridge is complete, do you think?
They say it will take 5 years, but who knows? As long as the work is steady, you won't find me complaining.
Do you normally work in construction?
Mostly. Sometimes I be doing other jobs here and there. But I'm lucky to have gotten this job. I think it will keep me in work for a long time. Which is good, because I have 3 mouths to feed at home.
Be sure to watch yourself then. I hear these types of jobs can be dangerous.
Oh, believe me, I know. One slip up and bam! That's the end of you. But I always watch myself.
How's your sister doing?
Good. She still works for the Dupre family, but with that monster Laura gone, she's much happier. She tells me the family is acting like the madame never existed, and the husband raised Amelie's pay, too.
That does sound like an improvement.
It's just a shame 2 others had to die for it.
Would you happen to know anything about the Redites?
I heard some of the other men talking about them, but I don't ask too many questions. Seems to me they just a bunch of angry and confused people with no other way to express themselves than lashing out. I admit I feel sorry for them.
You're not worried about Steam Tech putting you out of a job?
Nah. Machines can only do so much. You still need a man to make them work or to fix them when they're broke. I think them Redites are just making a big fuss over nothing.
Thank you, Gerard. I appreciate the information.
Not a problem, boss.
Not in much of a hurry to clean up in here, are they?
Begging your pardon, miss.
How can I help you, sir?
I understand you were involved with Ennis Bowditch.
Was involved, yes. I haven't spoken to him in nearly 2 months.
Oh, were you not aware of his death then?
What? Ennis is dead?
Well, this is awkward.
Indeed. I'm sorry to have to be the bearer of bad news.
How did it happen?
I'm afraid he was murdered.
Murdered? By who? And why?
Those are exactly the questions I'm trying to answer myself.
Oh, I see. Are you a detective?
A private investigator, yes.
Well, I'll answer what I can, if it helps any, that is.
I'm certain it will. What was your relationship with Mr. Bowditch like?
Oh, well, it was nice at first. He was a proper gentleman-like. But then something changed.
Oh?
It's like I told Ruby. I think he might have got hit on the head at work, because he seemed to be a completely different person. He'd get angry for no reason. He even... Well, that bit's not important. At first, I thought he was just going through some rough times, but after a while I realized he'd changed for the worse. So, I broke things off. He wasn't too happy about it, but I wasn't going to stick with a man like that.
This friend of yours, Ruby, did she know an MP named Percival McDonough?
I'm not sure. Ruby knows a lot of men.
Is that so?
Well, no, I don't mean... It's just... Oh, damn it all, me and my big mouth. She'll have my guts for garters now.
It's all right. No one's in trouble. But I think I'd like to speak with Ruby. Could you tell me where I can find her?
No. You see, she moves around quite a lot. Never in the same place for more than a night or two.
Right. I think she's given us a clear picture of what Ruby does for a living. Normally, I'd be all for pressing this girl more until she cracks, but I like her. I think we'll be able to find Ruby without causing her more discomfiture.
Well, thank you for the information. You've been very helpful. Are you familiar with the Justice Killer?
Justice Killer? Is that some kind of pesticide?
No, it isn't. Never mind. You've been working here for quite a while, haven't you?
I have, yes. Coming up on 3 years. Been a real pleasure getting to know all the regulars. They've come to be sort of like a second family. By the way, whatever happened with you and your lady friend?
I beg your pardon?
Oh, that nice lady you met in here a couple of times. Did it work out between the two of you?
Oh, that? No, that was strictly business.
Right. Well, if you see her, tell her I said hello.
I'll let you get back to work.
Thank you, sir.
You there! What are you doing?
I'm Miles Fordham. I'm trying to find out about...
No time for that now! Get in here and shield your eyes!
I beg your pardon?
Just do it!
What's going on exactly?
Shh! Everything ready, Alex? 3, 2, 1, go! Amazing! It works! It works!
What works?
Etheric lamps! Our experiment was a success!
What exactly have we wandered into here, Miles? Too bad you didn't get a chance to read that sign before their little experiment. Just a bunch of crap they used to build street lamps with. I wouldn't get too close to that thing. It might end up turning you inside out. So this is where all the lamps in the city come from. I can't believe I never bothered finding out before.
May I ask you a few questions?
Of course! What would you like to know?
You worked with a man named Burley Cause, is that right?
Yes, I heard he was killed. Such a senseless tragedy. It's a shame he missed out on our demonstration. He was really interested in etheric technology.
Wasn't he concerned about losing his job to these technological advances?
He had no reason to. It's been made clear to all the workers that there will always be a place for us, even if our jobs are made obsolete. Unlike some other places, we take care of our own here at the Lamplight Depot.
How noble. But I'm pretty sure he's full of more hot air than the HMS Lenore.
Is there anything you know about Mr. Cause's personal life that might be relevant?
I know he was married, but I don't believe he had any children. Oh, and he used to talk about his love for fishing.
Could you give me his home address? Perhaps his wife will be willing to speak with me.
Yes, certainly. He lived at 820 Orchard Avenue, apartment 2A.
Thank you for the information. Do you know any details about Mr. Cause's murder?
Unfortunately, I don't. The police were here asking questions, but they didn't give me many details.
Do you know of anyone who might have wanted him dead?
Not at all. Burley was very friendly, always treated everyone around here with respect. You know, it's sad to think that for all our leaps forward, we're still really just a bunch of savages.
Are you familiar with the Justice Killer?
I've read about it in the newspaper. A horrible business. It makes me wish we could install more street lamps to keep this city safer at night. Someday, I hope to realize that dream. Then we'll really deserve to be called Lamplight City.
You think brighter streets will stop serial murderers?
It's well known that crime rates are lower in Lyon and Worcester, and they have many more street lamps per square mile.
I'm sure it has absolutely nothing to do with the amount of wealth in those areas. It has to be all about the lighting.
You mentioned something about etheric lamps?
Yes! Weren't you paying attention to our demonstration? You have just witnessed history!
What I witnessed was a blinding flash of light.
Exactly! That flash was the result of years of painstaking research and experimentation. It means that not only does ethericity exist, but it can be used as a source of illumination. If these experiments continue to be successful, as I suspect they will, we'll have etheric street lamps before the end of the decade. Imagine lamps that burn twice as bright, 4 times as long. Oh, this will change everything.
And if it's like anything else we've seen, it'll put a lot of people out of work, too.
With all these promises of technological advancement, have the Redites given you any trouble?
Oh, those tech-fearing dolts. Yes, I'm sorry to say that we've gotten threats from them. They have yet to carry any out, which is unsurprising.
How so?
Groups like that are all bluster and no backbone.
I've seen some evidence to the contrary.
Is that right? Well, we've seen little beyond threatening letters, and I intend to make sure it stays that way.
You have any of these letters I might have a look at?
Yes, I have one. I'll give it to you before you leave.
What is it you do here exactly?
Oh, several things. This is the main hub of the city's Department of Illumination. It's really just a grandiose way of saying that this is where all affairs related to street lamps and public lighting are taken care of. But, in addition to sending out lamplighters or mechanics to repair damaged lamps, we also do research into new methods of illumination. That's what my personal specialization is. I help develop and test more efficient ways of lighting our streets. I guess you could consider me a modern-day Prometheus. Yes.
More like an everyday pretentious.
Thank you. Your cooperation is much appreciated.
Happy to help. Here's that letter you were asking about.
Now that's interesting. Whoever wrote this letter signed it with initials. They can't have been so stupid as to make themselves so easily identifiable, can they?